Hey, what up, y'all? Mr. Cruz here, the latest teacher you never had, back with another video. Today's video is going to be about stereo width. So if you don't know what stereo width is, that's just a fancy word for saying that your song, your track, your beat, your whatever has sounds very wide. So when I put my headphones on, I really hear a lot of those elements of the song or those instruments all around me. You want that because that'll give your mix a lot of clarity. So, you know, if you're doing things properly and you're EQing and you're panning your instruments the right way, not that there isn't a wrong way. I mean, there is definitely a wrong way. But if you're doing those things the right way, then your song will be very wide and it'll have a lot of space for the vocals to sit, which are usually dead smack in the middle. All right, so before we get into it, the good thing about this is that if you're a Reason user, actually not even if you're a Reason user, any DAW has this, you have some sort of imager or some sort of stereo widener in your DAW that should be coming stock. So on top of that, I'm going to be using Isotope's Ozone Imager 1. Now 2 just came out and I've tried 2, but to me 1, I know 1, so I'm going to stick to 1 with this one. You see what I did there? So that's good. So right out the gate, you should be able to do everything that I'm going to be showing you here in your DAW, no matter what. Two things that we're going to be going over before we even touch the plugins are routing and panning. Routing is kind of a thing of my own. Like I route my instruments a certain way in order to get width, and I'll explain what that means. But panning is just a general thing. Like you should definitely be panning your instruments correctly. So let's go ahead and start talking about routing first. So in my beat here, I've got 2 different drum buses that I'm sending everything to. So everything here in the orange is being sent to this one right here, which is my drum bus. So that's my kick, snare, hi-hats, all those things are being routed to my drum bus. Here I have my instruments and those are being sent to an instrument bus. So my drum bus and my instrument bus are going to be routed together and they're going to be sent to a bus called the beat bus. And then my beat bus is being sent to my submix. Now there's a reason for all of this and I'm going to explain to you in a second. But before that, I have my 808 and my kick. These two, now this is kind of being routed to like some parallel compression here. But my kick and my 808, and if I had like a bass guitar in this, then I would include the bass guitar as well. But those low frequency instruments, I'm gonna separate those and I'm not gonna route them the way that everything else is routed. Instead, I'm gonna send those straight to the master bus. The reason for that is when I apply my imager and when I get started on widening everything, I want to keep my heavy low end instruments right down the middle. The reason for that is because traditionally with panning, we're thinking of, I usually try to use the example of, with my students, I use the example of a drum kit. So if I'm at a concert and I see a drummer, right, and he's got all these instruments, you know, he's got a snare and toms and cymbals and hi-hats and all that stuff all surrounding him. So if he hits a hi-hat over here on his right side, I'm going to expect to hear that more in my right ear. If he hits a tom drum that's on his left, I'm going to expect to hear that more in my left ear. So that's kind of how you have to think of things when you're panning these instruments. So his kick drum is dead smack in the middle. So that means that I'm expecting to hear that kick drum right up the middle. And like when I put my headphones on, I should be able to envision that kick drum right in front of my eyes as if it was coming from, like if I had speakers all around, I'm expecting to hear that kick drum from right in front of me. With that said, I usually keep my bass, like my low end instruments, right down the middle. So that's why I'm not going to include my kick and my 808 in this particular beat. I'm not going to include those when I'm stretching and panning everything else out around me. All right. That one's for free. With panning, there's usually 2 schools of thought when it comes to panning. Is LCR, which is left, center, right, and that means you're panning everything that you have, either hard left, hard right, or right up the middle, down the center. I don't do that. I kind of abide by the other school of thought, which is I don't even think it has a name, but it just means that you're panning everything a little bit. You can kind of see here for most of my instruments, so my rim, my open hi-hat, my splash, I keep it down the center, but these 2 other instruments, like those are all being panned, but they're being panned just a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left. This one right here, this percussion, which I think is a tambourine. Yeah, so see how it's like halfway through? That's about as hard as I pan any of my instruments. To me, that just sounds better. When I have in the past, when I've tried like hard panning everything left and right, to me, it sounded unnatural. And I didn't like it. So I this is the way that I do it. You might try it out and you might like it. That's on you. Do what you think sounds good and what works for you. I'm just saying, like, to me, it didn't really work out too well. All right, so that's it. So we covered routing, we covered panning. Now we're actually going to get to that. So with that being said, is you want to make sure that you're panning your instruments properly. By properly, I mean you don't want to have everything right down the middle, because if you do, it's going to sound cloudy. It's going to sound muddy. It's just not going to sound good. Your song or your beat is not going to sound alive. Even though here it kind of seems like I have all of my instruments panned, these are bounced waves, and in the waves before I bounced them, I had them panned. So you'll kind of notice how some of those instruments are like going from left to right. So I'm just kind of clarifying that, because I want you to get the impression that I'm breaking my own rule here. And then there's also, as I'm kind of hooking this stuff up here, I also wanted to say there's also this other thought that people have that if you want your tracks to sound wide, to only have one track be in stereo and then have everything else be in mono. I've tried that before, and it might work for more acoustic environments. So like if you're mixing, a live band, that, you have a guitar, bass guitar, keys and stuff like that, that might work. For digital instruments or for synths, I find that doesn't work. It makes those, when you turn a synth that comes in stereo and you convert it to mono, it makes it sound very hollow, and it like has no body to it. So that's just another thing to keep in your mind, that you might hear people say that, but like if you look here, everything that I have here is in stereo. I'm just saying. All right, so here we're gonna start out. I've already panned stuff, so we're just gonna take a listen to what it sounds like panned already. All right. All right, you know what? That doesn't sound too bad. And the reason it doesn't sound bad is because I panned my instruments. But I want it to sound even better, and I want it to sound more, give it more width. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use the M-Class Stereo Imager, which I think is probably one of the better or one of the best stock instruments, stock effects that Reason has, as far as like the M-Class ones, because the M-Class EQ to me is trash. So the way that this works is you should have something similar to this in your DAW. But this kind of might be a feature exclusive to Reason here, is that we have this frequency knob. So what this frequency knob does is it splits the frequency band in two. So I have the left side is going to be my low side, the right side is going to be my high band, so my low band and my high band, and then those are being affected. Those can be manipulated through these two knobs that are on the side. The way that I do this is I'm going to start by soloing, and I'm going to mute this for a second. Or not mute, I'm going to solo this so that you can kind of hear that you're not going to hear any bass, because, again, my 808 and my kick are being routed straight to the master bus. So I'm going to hit solo low band, and I'm going to play, and then I'm going to turn this knob down until I really only hear the low frequencies of these instruments that are already being routed to the submix. All right. And then you might kind of hear like it didn't seem like it affected the hi-hat, but that's because the hi-hat has a send through a phaser. So that's not going to, you're still going to hear that, but you're not going to hear it being affected or impacted here. All right. So there I find that all I'm really hearing is like the low frequency of this chords, which is fine. So now on my left side, so on my low band, I'm going to narrow those frequencies. On my high band, I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to widen those. So when I narrow them, I'm not doing a whole lot. I'm not going to pan this hard to the left or to the right or anything like that, because when you do, you're really stretching I don't think it's frequency response is not the right word, but you're really stretching that audio file more than it needs to, or in a way that if you do it too much, it's going to sound unnatural, and it's going to sound bad. Usually if it sounds unnatural, it's going to sound bad. So I'm going to only do a little bit, and I'm going to play this while I'm doing this. And you're probably not even going to be able to tell a difference, probably unless you're using headphones, but here we go. And again, my low band is soloed here, so you're really only hearing the low band. So you see there, I didn't do a whole lot. Now I'm going to go to normal, and then we'll kind of bypass this so we can A-B it. All right, again, I'm really not hearing much of a difference, if any. So it's kind of like some snake oil, it might sound. But the reason we do that is because we can break that band up. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to attach the Isotope Ozone Imager. Now, Ozone Imager 2 recently came out, but I'm sticking with 1. But let's get to it. So with Imager, all we're going to do is 2 things. Super simple. We're going to open it up. I'm going to hit this pin to keep it open, and then I'm going to hit this button here that says Stereoize. So with Stereoize, I'm going to pull this with fader, not all the way up, but I'm going to pull it up gradually as I'm listening to it till I get a good decent amount of stereo width. Now when I play, you're going to see right here that we already got some decent stereo width. So you're going to see that the frequency response being, pretty spread out, but this will give us a little bit even more, and this doesn't sound and it'll give it a more natural sound. All right, so let's go ahead and press play. All right, so right there you can kind of tell, like, man, that sounds so much better. I'm going to A-B this here so we can kind of compare the two. So there you go. I pulled it back a little bit just because I felt like when it went to the wide, it didn't sound too good. So I pulled it back some. But there you go. So 2 easy plugins that you can use to make your beats in your songs sound wider. The other thing is I kind of wanted to explain to you guys the reason why I did this the way that I did. So with the stereo imager, I want to make sure that whatever low frequencies in those instruments are being narrowed, because that signal is all going to be widened when I go to the ozone imager. So that's why I don't send my kick and my 808 there, because if I do, that's going to spread that 808 and that kick and those low frequencies, and that's just going to, it sounds really bad in the past when I've done it. So anyways, that's what I got for you guys today. Hopefully that's helpful to you guys. Make sure you guys leave me a comment in the description. Anyways, that's what I got for you guys today. Hopefully that's something helpful to you, to help you get your mixes sounding a lot more wider. If you guys are interested, I've got a sale on my MIDI pack down in the description below, only $7, which is traditionally $10. The price is going to be going up at the end of this month, so make sure you guys go ahead and snag that deal while you can. It comes with over 30 loops, but it also comes with the audio file and the MIDI files for those loops for you guys to be able to use. Outside of that, it's your boy Mr. Cruz out.